Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to New Zealand once again for the first time in what feels like a good long while. Now, we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel quite a few times before. These guys are a very well established and very well recognised name within the Kiwi beer scene. One of the first Kiwi breweries I came across actually when I started the channel up, and back in the day I reviewed a number of their beers, but it was only quite recently that I reviewed one of their beers again. There was a big gap in my reviews from this brewery, which is quite unfortunate because I always enjoyed this brewery's beers. But the beer that we're going to have a look at from them today is one of their latest releases here in Hong Kong. It's a fairly new style to the beer scene generally speaking, and so it's also a style that I haven't tried from these guys before, and within that style category it's also a little bit different. So I think this one could be really interesting to try. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head down to New Zealand. Like I said, we are going to go to the North Island, we're going to go to the Auckland area, but a little bit to the north of there to Warkworth, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Wired Brewing. So this particular beer is called Cold Hard Crash. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a cold double IPA. So yeah, this should be really interesting. I've been enjoying the cold IPAs that I've been trying over the last wee while, but this is the very first cold double IPA that I've come across. And you know, I like the artwork on this one. I used to love playing Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation, and I love Wired as well. So yeah, I thought this one could be really interesting to try. If memory serves me correctly, this is one that I picked up at the Wine Rack store in Tsim Sha Tsui in Kowloon here in Hong Kong, and as I say, it was just a bit of a random find, but I couldn't resist this one, especially when it's, as I say, from a brewery I really like, and also a style that I haven't really tried before. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we get on. A cold double IPA, 8% ABV from the wonderful Wired Brewing in Warkworth on the North Island in New Zealand. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Wired Brewing Company before, and I'm hoping that we can add some more to that list at some point in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the New Zealand playlist, of course, along with other things, which is being added to quite regularly these days, because we do get a decent selection of Kiwi beers here in Hong Kong, which I'm very happy about. But do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Wired Brewing then. So, Wired Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Warkworth, which is to the north of Auckland on the North Island down in New Zealand, and the brewery was founded by the nomadic Dane Soren Eriksson, who set up permanent roots in Marlborough in New Zealand along with his wife Monique. So Soren actually spent some time studying in Perth in Western Australia, and he was a known regular at the Little Creatures brew pub in Fremantle, or Frio as they call it there. But he moved to New Zealand later on in 2006, and after completing his biochemistry masters in 2005, he met his wife Monique, who is a Kiwi, hence the reason that he moved there. He met her up in Bangladesh. But at one stage he was given a Cooper's home brewing kit by Monique, and this sparked his love of brewing, and they agreed that they would open a brew pub together. But he left his research activities in 2008 and he worked at Renaissance Brewing in Blenheim to gain some experience. But he soon discovered that maintaining a brewery is a hugely demanding task, and so he decided to go down the route of gypsy brewing, and for a period most of their beer was brewed at Renaissance in Blenheim and also at Steam Brewing in Auckland. But the first 8-wire beer was produced in 2009, and the brewery's name comes from the number 8 gauge wire that was initially used in electric fences, but it became hugely versatile, and the name is supposed to be inspired by the kind of Kiwi ingenuity and can-do attitude. If you ever meet New Zealand people, if you ever meet Kiwis, they're very, very positive and very just very. They've got a bit of get-go to them, I think, is how you can describe them in my experience, at least. But in 2013, they set up their own brewery in Warkworth to the north of Auckland, and over the years they've continued to expand this brewery, and they've now got a second site 10 minutes away in Matakana. So this facility houses their tap room, which boasts 20 taps, and it houses what could be the largest barrel program in the Southern Hemisphere. It includes 7 fodders ranging from 1,500 to 4,000 litres, and they've got about 200 regular 225 litre barrels as well. So there's a lot of interesting stuff coming out of 8 Wired, needless to say. But in March of 2024, it was announced that the brewery would be put up for sale as Soren and Monique felt that they needed to take a break and they wanted to go travelling with their children before they got too old. But it is possible that they'll remain involved in the company going forward, but they will apparently kind of step back from the day-to-day running of things. When I checked just before starting filming this video, there seemed to be no news about a takeover or anything like that. So yeah, as far as I know, the brewery is kind of still up for sale at the moment. And of course, the economy worldwide isn't that great just now, so I can imagine it will continue that way for a wee while, but we'll just need to see. As long as 8 Wired Brewing continues, that is the main thing. But as of February 2025, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced about 300 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. But yeah, that is everything I can tell you about 8 Wired Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a wee look at the beer itself. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is fabulous. I have to say that. I love Crash Bandicoot, so this one is absolutely right up my street. Plain silver top on the can there, as you would expect. This one is this 440 millilitres? I think it is. Yeah, 440 rather than 473. One thing I did actually quite like is that, they had the 8% ABV in the text, and then of course I think this means that it must be like triple dry hopped or something like that, with the 3 things on the side there. And I did like, yeah, they've even got look at the way they've done the 8 Wired thing there, like the old PlayStation symbol. So yeah, that's pretty cool, I have to say. Yeah, I really like the artwork on this one. I think I'll need to keep this can. I think this one's made it to the can wall, actually. But yeah, it tells you a little bit about the beer on the side here as well. It says, hop into a crate smashing, Wumpa grabbing, crystal collecting adventure. This Imperial Cold IPA, brewed for the annual World WCIP Challenge at Malt House, is cold fermented for a super smooth, crisp finish. In classic West Coast IPA fashion, we've packed this beer with Nectaron, Simcoe, Citra and Cryo Mosaic hops for a huge burst of citrus and pine. Packs more punch than a butt-kicking Bandicoot. So yeah, this is good actually. I really like that. So all of the hops in this one are American except Nectaron, which is a New Zealand hop, of course, if I remember rightly. It's either 14 or 16% alpha acid, I forget, and it gives you this kind of yeah, I want to say nectarine, but it's kind of like, it gives you quite a lot of sort of pineapple and peachy character from what I remember. But Simcoe, yeah, 12% alpha acid, that gives you a lot of kind of soft passion fruit. Citra, in a more West Coasty IPA, it's going to give you a little bit of it. It's going to show its lychee and gooseberry type side, but lots of tropical fruit, the grapefruit, the mangoes and stuff like that. And then yeah, the Mosaic is going to give you that distinctive little earthy note, but lots of kind of tangerine oranges. And both of those two, Citra and Mosaic, are 14% alpha acid. But yeah, this one I think should be really quite nice. The Cold Hard Crash Cold Double IPA, 8% ABV from 8 Wired Brewing. Let's get this guy out into the glass then and see how we go. I've had a few cold IPAs on the channel. It must only be 5 or 6. It's not that many, in all honesty. I'd love to have more. But yeah, the cold IPAs are really, really nice beers actually. And especially for me, I love my lagers, so the cold IPA is something that kind of I naturally like, I feel. But yeah, this is the first cold double IPA that I've come across actually, and that was what really caught my eye with this one, as well as the artwork. So yeah, anyway, we've got about 80% of the beer out and into the glass, and you can see it's poured really nicely. So before the head disappears, you can see that this beer is poured with about a 3/4 finger of quite a soapy, bumpy, but perfect white head there. You can see that it looks really nice, kind of medium-sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid, but more kind of big bubbly ones sitting on top of that. And you can see if I put my hand behind the glass there, it's got a lovely kind of pale golden straw colour to it. So yeah, remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker coloured beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But you don't often have to care about that when it comes to different kinds of IPAs, in all honesty. A little touch of natural haze to this one, but yeah, pretty much a clear beer. This, you can see the head has faded away to just be a slightly wispy layer on top, but you've got that kind of sticky ring around the edge of the glass there. But in terms of appearance, it's pretty much in line with what you would expect from it's pretty much in line with what you would expect from a cold IPA. So yeah, quite happy with the appearance of this one. For those of you who don't know what a cold IPA is, my understanding is a little bit limited on these, so take what I say with a pinch of salt. But basically, the main difference you have between ales and lagers is the type of yeast that you use and the temperature at which they ferment. So lagers will ferment between 8 to 12 degrees using bottom fermenting yeast. Ales will ferment at like 15 to 16 degrees using top fermenting yeast. So the cold IPA, from what I understand, is basically just a lager fermented IPA. So they use lager yeasts in these, basically, but it uses an IPA recipe. And there could be more there probably are more technicalities to that, but that is my basic understanding of it, in honesty. So yeah, anyway, looks like a nice beer. Let's have a wee look at the aroma then and see what this one is going to be like. I'm very curious, as I say. Oh, interesting. Right, so this is the only thing with cold IPAs. Their aromas are usually pretty mild, in all honesty. So yeah, for me, this one, the aroma is quite it's actually like a little bit kind of almost a little bit grainy in things, which I'm quite surprised about. But you get all the fruitiness and things like that. The aroma is very, very mild. Yeah, cold IPAs don't tend to have the most pungent of aromas in my experience, but it does smell pretty nice. I mean, it's got a little bit of bready character, good little bit of green component, and the fruits, of course, are very, very subtle in there as well. So yeah. For me then, let's just try and break this down and describe it for you more in depth. I think we're going to get more out of the flavour of this one though, in all fairness. But yeah, the backbone of the beer, you've got that lovely fresh white bready bread crust in there, and that in this beer for me is very, very nice. So yeah, lovely fresh white bready bread crust in there. Definitely little touches of wood and little bits of cracker as well. Yeah, a little bit of wood, a little bit of cracker. Then on top of that there's a wee touch of like wholemeal brown bread as well. Yeah, a little bit of wholemeal brown bread, soft white, yeah, softer kind of fluffier white bread above that, good little bit of cracker, as I say, and then on top of that, yeah, you've got a wee bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit as well. Yeah, brown bread, white bread, yeah. Little bit of brown bread, little bit of white bread. Yeah, wee bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit. Then yeah, there's a wee touch of that more concentrated biscuit, and I don't know if I'd go as far as caramel, in all honesty. But yeah, the way it goes together, I think, is really, really nice. I don't know if there's too much else to say about the malty side of this one, in honesty. It's quite it really is quite straightforward. On the yeasty side of things, this one for me, the yeasty side of this one has some really nice, yeah, it's got some really nice kind of like brown bready character to it and some sort of crackery notes, almost like a farmhousey type bread in all honesty. And yeah, that kind of lingers there at the back of the nose, but all in all, the way it goes together, I think, is really, really nice. So again, it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, quite happy with that. But yeah, I don't know if there's too much else to say about it. So let's focus on the hoppy side of this beer then. So as I've mentioned in many of my IPA reviews, there are 3 types of hopping that you get in IPAs. You get early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly bitterness and a deep dank aroma. Or deep dank green component, I should say. You've got late addition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of your wort boil, and it gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour aroma and a very bright green component. Then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, and that's all about flavour and aroma, and it gives you again a very bright green component. So yeah, West Coast IPAs tend to use all 3, which makes them, you know, that more oily and deeper, danker and more bitter. New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping, which makes them kind of softer and more juicy. Cold IPAs, I think, it just depends on what the brewer feels like, to be honest with you. I don't think there's a particular trend with these, if that makes sense. But yeah, for me, just going by the aroma of this one, I think this has got a wee bit of, I think just from it, I think it has got a little bit of early addition hop, but not too much. There's a wee touch of earthiness coming out of the green component, which is most likely to be mosaic. There's bits of floral note in there as well, but it's mainly leaning toward the grassy side of things, in honesty. So yeah, that's the interesting thing about it, in all honesty. It's just, I'm just surprised there is quite a bit of this vegetally earthy kind of note coming out of this beer, and I'm curious about that because it is double. And you know, the IPL, the India Pale Lagers, those are quite, you know, I remember those as well. They were quite difficult styles to kind of get the balance right, so that's one of the reasons why I'm curious about this too. And in honesty, that's another thing. I'm not overly clear on the difference between the IPL and the cold IPA, in honesty. So yeah, but yeah, for me, it might be they're using an IPA yeast and just fermenting it at the lower temperatures. That could well be it. Because you know, it would work depending on the yeast strain. Of course, the lower temperature wouldn't kill it. It obviously just wouldn't work at its optimum speed or whatever. But yeah, that might well be the difference. But yeah, the green component for me on this one is mostly grassy. But let's focus on the fruity side of things just to round off the aroma section. So for me, the fruity side of this one is actually kind of mostly tropical leaning. I mean, there's a wee bit of I would say, I'm getting a wee bit of the peach from the Citra. There's lots of mango in there, obviously. You've got apricots, you've got pears, sultanas, stuff like that. And yeah, there's a little bit of a more kind of orangey type character coming out of this one as well from the mosaic. The Nectaron, I think, is kind of contributing to the sort of there's a bit of pineapple, you know. I think the whole Nectaron thing is kind of giving you the sort of pineapple-y and kind of helping the pineapple-y and peachy notes that this beer has. So yeah, I'd say peach, mango, apricot, pineapple, all of these kind of things, and then yeah, a bit of an orangey tangerine note from the mosaic. Of course, the Simcoe's going to contribute to that as well with the kind of passion fruity type things, and you can smell a wee bit of that behind it. But yeah, all in all, the way that everything kind of pieces together in this beer, I think is very, very nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. I really like how this goes together. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. So yeah, very, very curious about this. So let's get the rest of it into the glass and we'll have a taste of this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Cold Hard Crash. I thought it was Cold Hard Crush. Yeah, Cold Hard Crash, a cold double IPA, 8% ABV from 8 Wired Brewing in Warkworth in New Zealand. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Ooh. Yeah, that's pretty nice. Yeah, I like how that goes together. I will say, with this one, you can feel the booziness with it. It has that similar problem in a way that the IPLs did. You used to get Imperial IPLs and stuff like that too, I remember. But yeah, the IPL, it was always a thing. They always had to make those a little bit heavier in alcohol. And with that style, I always felt that they never really figured out how to kind of cover up the booze, or, well, not cover it up, but smoothen it out in a way. And you can feel that a little bit with this one. It is a nice, enjoyable beer, but the boozy side of things, it just doesn't feel that rounded. It just needs a little bit more sweetness or something. I mean, this beer, if you put just a little touch of carapils or something like that in this one, there maybe is already right enough, and it's maybe just the booziness is too much. But if you put just a slightly sweeter malt in this one, you might get a wee bit more, just a wee bit more out of it in a sense. And just going by the lightness of this one, I think carapils is a bit more light, but of course you've got you could put just a little bit of straight up caramel or something in it just to round it up, but then you get the more amber colour, of course. So yeah, there's a few things going on in my head. I'm an ingredients and kind of recipe nerd, if you like, when it comes to beer. So that's kind of what's in my head here. It is a nice and enjoyable beer, but yeah, you can get the booziness out of this, in all honesty. But once your kind of palate gets used to that, you get everything else that comes out. So it does have a wee bit of impact, booziness almost. But then, yeah, everything else in the beer, sort of kind of rounds off quite nicely, I would say. Yeah. So let's just break this down then and describe it for you more in depth, as we always do. So yeah, middle third of your palate then, the backbone of the beer. You've got that lovely kind of fresh, sort of fresh, I'd say it's actually more of a kind of brown bready bread crust in the flavour, to be honest with you. So yeah, kind of wholemeal brown bready bread crust forming the backbone of the beer. As you go further forward on that, there's a little bit of, there's a sort of woodiness further forward on the middle of your palate, and then yeah, you've got a little bit of Jacob's cream cracker sitting above that. So yeah, a little bit of Jacob's cream cracker in there, and then you start to get the bready notes out of the beer. So for me, there is a layer of a more grainy wholemeal brown bread in there. And then yeah, you have a little bit of a more, you've got a more kind of fluffy white bready character sitting above that, and the white bready notes are a little bit more, they're actually quite dense in a way. It feels like quite a dense white bread, which I find quite interesting. So yeah, the way that goes together, I do quite enjoy as well. But on the, on top of that, you start to get the boozy side and the kind of sweeter side of the beer. So you can feel, I don't know if it's right to say maybe slightly toasty brown sugar, but toasty biscuit anyway. So there's a nice kind of toasty biscuity note coming out of the beer. So yeah, there's a nice little bit of the toasty biscuity kind of character coming out of this one. So yeah, that's quite obvious. Yeah, that's quite obvious in this beer. A little bit of the toasty biscuity character. Then in the dead centre of your palate, you can feel that circle there, and that's where you get that really concentrated, boozy biscuity sort of thing. And around the edge of it, there maybe is a little bit of sweet caramel there. But yeah, the beer itself is the malty side of this beer is quite boozy. This thing, it does struggle to cover its booze, but maybe this is something that they'll adapt a little bit over time, because I remember trying some of the New England IPAs in the early days with those. I found that they struggled to cover their boozy side once they went over about 8%, but then they managed to fix that, of course. So maybe that's something that will happen with the cold IPAs. We'll just need to see. But yeah, that booziness that this beer has is pretty damn obvious, actually. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate then. So let's go to the back third of the palate. As I've often said, sweeter flavours will come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours will come out further back, and you've generally got quite a bit of similarity between middle and back third of your palate in terms of the types of flavours you get, just different intensities. But yeah, border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of that bready build up in there. So there's a kind of brown bready character in the base, a sort of fluffier white bready character on top, and then there's maybe a wee bit of like a Pilsner malty dryness in this one. But I think if there is, I'm pretty sure there is a bit of Pilsner malt in here, and it comes out more and more into the aftertaste. You get that typical Pilsner malty bite or dryness or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, you get the brown bready bread crust again, the drier side of things. Then you've got the Jacob's cream cracker sitting in on top of that. The brown bready part of the beer, which is a little bit lighter, taller, and more airy. The white bready part of the beer, which again is a little bit lighter, taller, and more airy. And then yeah, above that, you get the above that you get the kind of more toasty, biscuity side of things, just creeping over the top. But yeah, above everything else on that back third of your palate, you get the yeasty part of the beer. So yeah. So for me, the yeasty side of this beer, at its core, it has like it feels like somewhere between a more grainy and slightly sweet wholemeal brown bread, and then yeah, it's more of a grainy wholemeal bread at the core, I would say. Then it's surrounded by a more sweet wholemeal brown bread, and then yeah, the very edge of it is a bit more of a kind of toasty bread crusty sort of thing. So yeah, on the back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller, and then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, yeah, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together in this beer, I think, is quite interesting. But yeah, it does struggle to cover its booze, in all honesty. I've said that a few times. But yeah, onto the hoppy side of things for the beer now. And I will say the beer actually does show you a little bit of bitterness into the aftertaste as well. So yeah, back corners of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. That's for sure. Then as you move further forward, it's got a wee touch of a herbally sort of thing, woody maybe. But yeah, as you push further and further forward along the sides of the palate there, you have as you push further and further forward along the sides of the palate there, you do get, there's a little touch of an almost kind of piney resinous sort of thing, and a wee bit of a kind of floral aromaticity. So yeah, you do get that. It's a little bit spicy in terms of its floral character, actually. I think there has been early addition hop in here, but round the front curve of your tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy. And then yeah, you've got all the fruitiness kind of behind that. So let's look at that front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of the beer. So yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that little bit of kind of bready build up in there. Underneath that, there's a wee bit of a kind of more there's a little bit of a more kind of brown bready brown bready kind of character in there, the white bready note, and then yeah, a wee bit of the kind of Pilsner malty stuff above that. But yeah, the base of the front third of your palate, brown bready bread crust, cracker, brown bread, white bread, and a little bit of biscuity note. Yeah, a little bit of the kind of biscuity stuff does creep forward there. Then you get that oily bubble where the fruity juicy esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a wee look at that. So, yeah, back the fruity side of this one is kind of what you'd expect if you know these hops, in all honesty. So yeah, at the back of that bubble on the front third of your palate, you're getting a little bit more of there's a bit of that stronger grapefruit in there, but then yeah, further forward you're getting a nice kind of peachy note in there. Yeah, there's the grapefruit at the back, there's a little bit of peachy character in there, then yeah, underneath that you've got big juicy mango. There's a nice kind of passion fruity note as well, and as you move further forward, it's as you move further forward to the middle of the palate, you've got a wee bit of like, yeah, apricot and stuff like that, and I'd say yeah, on top you get, I think there's a little bit of pineapple as well. So all the tropical fruit in this one, it's the Simcoe's giving you the passion fruit, the Citra's giving you the more kind of the Citra, and the Nectar are the ones giving you the kind of complexity, if you like. But yeah, as you go into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's all about the mosaic. You get that big tangerine orangey note. Then there's a wee bit, if you reach the front tip of your tongue, that's more the kind of, there's a little bit of the lychee in there and a wee touch of the kind of lemon limey note, and that's Citra that's giving you that. So yeah, interesting. It really is quite interesting how all this one just pieces together. I love this when you try a sort of new take on a style that even this style I don't know that well, and making a cold double IPA, this is a completely new thing. So it's a first on the channel, this. So this beer really is making me think a little bit. But the fruity side of things as well, I think it is affected a little bit by the booziness of the beer. So yeah, a lot of food for thought from this. Like I say, we've covered all the flavour now. I think overall it's a nice beer, but it does struggle to cover its boozy side, and I would guess they might figure this out. Breweries generally might figure this out a little bit later. How to kind of cover up the booze a little bit better in these beers. But I do wonder if cold double IPAs are not going to catch on because of the same issues that were had with the IPLs and stuff like that. But yeah, it's an enjoyable beer, this one. It's nice to try something new, but yeah, I think the style is going to struggle a wee bit because of the issues I mentioned throughout this video. But yeah, I think we've said everything we really need to about the flavour of this beer, to be honest. So let's go on and round off without a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. As you'd expect, pardon me, this one, yeah, I'd describe it as being at the top end of light-bodied. Carbonation is very smooth. It's quite clean, and it's also quite light, and it's also quite light and quite slick. In a way, it's like slightly oily and slightly slick, to be honest with you. But it's kind of, as I say, quite light and quite slick, slightly oily, and it shows you more bitterness into the aftertaste as well. This beer must be about 50 or 60 IBUs, something like that, and that bitterness does linger there into the aftertaste. The malt base has a bit of dryness underneath, smoothness in the middle, and a kind of drier sweetness on top. And then yeah, you've got that lovely little bit of fruitiness, that oily fruitiness sitting on top of it as well. So that's it's really nice the way this one goes together. In terms of the flavour into the aftertaste, it's nice, but yes, I say the only thing with this is it struggles to cover its boozy side. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This one was the Cold Hard Crash, which, the more that I think about it, that name seems appropriate. The Cold Hard Crash, an 8% cold double IPA from Wired Brewing Company in Warkworth, near Auckland in New Zealand. A really interesting experiment, this one. As I say, I think this style struggles a wee bit because of the just to cover the booze, in all honesty. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This has been a really interesting beer to try. I love doing Kiwi beers and New Zealand beer, Kiwi beers and 8-wire beers. So yeah, this was good. But once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from 8-Wired Brewing Company as well. And we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, Slanjuk, Scott, cheers, check out my social media, check out their social media. And I'll catch you guys in another review very, very soon. Ciao just now.